Hello everyone, and welcome back to In Focus with Ken Clough Photography. I'm your host, Ken Clough, and today's episode is a very special one for me. Normally, we spend our time talking together about photography, weddings, portraits, and the stories behind the images. But today, I want to take you on a journey, a personal journey, into how my passion for cinematography and videography began, how it has shaped my creative career, and why it remains such an important part of the way I tell stories today. This episode is titled, From 8mm Film to Modern Videography, A Creative Journey. And that's exactly what it is. A story of how I went from experimenting with an 8mm camera in my basement at 16 to weaving cinematic wedding films for couples today. So sit back, relax, and let me take you all the way back to where it started, with an old film camera, some makeshift props, and an imagination sparked by the magic of the movies. The beginning, Galaxy 5. I can still picture it like it was yesterday. I was 16 years old, down in my basement with a Super 8 film camera, one of those old school ones that used actual rolls of film. It was the late 1970s, and Star Wars had just come out, changing everything I thought was possible in storytelling. George Lucas's universe of spaceships, lightsabers, and epic battles had me absolutely hooked. Inspired, I decided to make my own movie. I called it Galaxy 5. Now, let's set the stage here. I didn't have a studio, or actors, or a budget. What I had was my basement, my backyard, and an imagination that was running at hyperspeed. For props, I got creative. Spaceships? I built them out of old vacuum cleaner parts and scrap pieces I found around the house. Interior shots of a spaceship cockpit? Those were cobbled together with odds and ends, including pieces from old board games and whatever else I could scavenge. For the action scenes, I brought the adventure outside into the backyard. I built a homemade ray gun, and we filmed our space battles under the open sky. The best part? To make laser blasts, I scratched directly on the developed film, creating lines, and then painstakingly colored each frame with markers. It was primitive compared to Hollywood, but in my mind, it was pure magic. Once the shooting was done, I spliced the footage together, cut by cut, tape by tape. The final product wasn't going to win an Academy Award, but it was mine. It was my story, my vision, and my first real experience with creating something cinematic. Looking back, Galaxy 5 wasn't just a kid's basement project. It was the first time I discovered the thrill of bringing a story to life through visuals, editing, and imagination. That little film, scrappy and handmade as it was, lit a fire in me that has never gone out. Discovering cinematography. After finishing Galaxy 5, I was hooked. I wanted to know everything there was to know about filmmaking, about cinematography, and how professionals brought stories to life with light, camera angles, and editing. I started devouring every book I could find about filmmaking. I'd spend hours in the library poring over guides to cinematography, studying how directors frame shots, how lighting could set the mood, and how editing could shape a story. Remember, this was before YouTube tutorials and online masterclasses. If you wanted to learn, you learned from books, magazines, and by experimenting on your own. Every page I turned was like unlocking a new secret. I learned about the rule of thirds, about how different lenses could change the look and feel of a shot, and about the power of wide-angle versus tight framing. I studied the way films use sound to heighten drama or evoke emotion. I even dabbled with storyboarding, sketching out shots and scenes in notebooks, trying to map out how a story would flow. While my interest eventually took me more deeply into photography, cinematography was always there, sitting in the back of my mind like a quiet whisper. Remember how much you love this. remember how alive it makes you feel. From photography to videography. Fast forward a few years, and I had built a photography business. I loved capturing weddings, portraits, families, and all those fleeting moments that deserve to be preserved. But that whisper in the back of my mind, the call of cinematography, never really left. Eventually, I decided to bring it back to the forefront and add videography to the services I offered. When I think about it, the way I approach videography today is not all that different from how I approached Galaxy 5 all those years ago in my basement. The tools have changed. Of course, now I'm working with professional video cameras, stabilizers, and editing software instead of 8mm film tape and splicers. But the heart of the process is exactly the same. I think of videography as storytelling. Just like I imagined scenes for my homemade space adventure, now I imagine scenes for a wedding day. Instead of the drama of a space adventure, I'm capturing the emotion of vows, first dances, and the tear in a father's eye as he walks his daughter down the aisle. But the principle is the same. You're capturing a narrative, a cinematic experience, and something that moves people emotionally. Storytelling through weddings. When I film a wedding, I don't just press record and hope for the best. I approach it like a filmmaker. I storyboard in my mind, and sometimes on paper, the key moments I want to capture. I think about how those moments will connect, and how they will tell the couple's unique story. I talk to my couples ahead of time and ask, what do you want to see in your wedding film? What moments matter the most to you? Sometimes it's the vows. Sometimes it's the laughter with friends during the reception. Sometimes it's a quiet, private moment before the ceremony when no one else is around. Once I know what is important to them, I build that vision into my plan. As I film, I'm constantly thinking about how each scene will fit together. The wide establishing shots that show the venue, the medium shots that capture the couple interacting, the close-ups that reveal emotion, the clasp of hands, the nervous smile, or the tear rolling down the cheek. It's like building a puzzle, piece by piece, where every shot has a purpose in the final story. The cinematic mindset. One of the biggest lessons I learned from those early days of scratching laser beams onto film is that cinematography is about more than equipment. It's about vision. It's about seeing the story before you capture it. When I'm filming, I'm constantly asking myself, how does this angle contribute to the story? How does this shot feel? What emotion will this evoke when it's placed next to the next scene? For example, when I capture a bride walking down the aisle, I'm not just documenting her steps. I'm thinking about how to frame her entrance, how to show the groom's reaction, and how to cut between the two to build suspense and emotion. When I capture a first dance, I'm not just recording movement. I'm thinking about the music, the lighting, the way the couple looks at each other, and how I can make that moment feel more like a scene in a movie. That's the cinematic mindset, and that's what makes videography so powerful. Why videography matters. Photography freezes moments. Videography breathes them to life. A photo can show you a smile, but videography can let you hear the laughter. A photo can capture the first kiss, but video lets you relive the vows, the emotion of the voices, and the applause from the guests. For me, that's the magic. That's why I have embraced videography so fully as part of my work. Because it's not just about recording an event, it's about preserving the story, the feeling, and the emotion. It's about giving couples a chance to relive their day, not just in still frames, but in movement, in sound, and in sequence. Lessons from 8mm film. Sometimes I think back to that 8mm camera and smile at the parallels. In both cases, it comes down to creativity, resourcefulness, and vision. When I didn't have access to Hollywood special effects, I scratched lines into film with markers. When I don't have a second camera angle at a wedding, I get creative with framing, movement, and editing to make the story dynamic. When I built spaceships out of vacuum cleaner parts, I was really just practicing the art of making something magical out of what you have. Today, that lesson carries over to how I adapt to the challenges during a wedding shoot. Because, let's face it, weddings rarely go exactly as planned. Weather changes, schedules shift, and lighting conditions evolved. You adapt, you get resourceful, and you make it work. Closing thoughts. My journey from that 16-year-old kid with an 8mm camera to where I am today has been shaped by one constant: the love of storytelling through images, whether still or moving. Cinematography planted that seed, and videography allows me to bring it to life for couples who trust me to capture one of the most important days of their lives. Every time I film a wedding, I carry a little piece of that wide-eyed teenager with me. The one who believed he could make spaceships fly and laser beams shoot across the screen. That sense of wonder is what fuels me, what keeps me passionate, and what makes every project a new adventure. So when you watch one of my wedding films, know this: behind every great shot is not just a professional videographer. It's a storyteller who's been chasing the magic of cinema since the first time he spliced together a film in his basement. Thank you for joining me on this personal journey today. I hope you enjoyed hearing about how my love of cinematography began, how it has evolved, and how it continues to inspire the way I capture stories through videography. This has been In Focus with Ken Clough Photography. I'm Ken Clough, and I'll see you next time.